Wednesdays with Will. I am Caroline Norton. Let's get started. So today we are going to be talking about the ways that Shakespeare's plays were published. So in order to do that, we're going to need to go back in time to the late 1500s, early 1600s. Now, when Shakespeare was writing his plays to be performed by his company of actors, remember, they are called the King's Men or the Lord Chamberlain's Men, he would write down by hand everyone's individual parts. Which means every actor would get a scroll, and when they opened up that scroll, they had only their lines and their cue lines. And a cue line is a theater term, meaning the line right before you're supposed to speak, to signal you to speak. Make sense? Now, the reason why you would only get your individual parts is because printing was super expensive back in the day. And it took a lot of time that these guys did not have. Because Shakespeare didn't have a lot of money to print anyway, he figured, okay, well, I'm just gonna write these all out by hand so that everyone has their individual parts, and that's all they really need. But another reason why this is how his plays were given out is because copyright laws did not exist back in the day, meaning anybody could just walk in, take his scripts, and then pass them off as his own. So in order to prevent that from happening, he would just write out individual parts, and after everyone was finished memorizing, they'd be thrown away or hidden or put to the side so that people couldn't come in and steal them. So you couldn't actually, back then, sit down and read a full Shakespeare play like you can today. The only way to experience Shakespeare's works was to witness them, was to go to the theater and see them being performed. Now, a little bit later in Shakespeare's career, he did sign off on having a couple of his plays printed. But the way that this worked was a lot different than how we think of printing and publishing plays today. Back then, they had what's called a quarto. And a quarto is essentially you take a piece of paper, you fold it twice, and it creates 4 pages. And you would do that on several different sheets of paper, and you would sew them together. And that's how you would create a little booklet. And in those little booklets were individual plays from Shakespeare. Like Romeo and Juliet could be done in a quarto. Now, I mentioned that Shakespeare did sign off on having a couple of those printed, but there were also a lot of fake quartos being put out. Those are called the bad quartos. And those are versions that were either misremembered by people or stolen from people, and they tried to print them and pass them off as their own, but they were not the real deal, legitimate quartos of Shakespeare's plays. Now, much later, after Shakespeare's death, a new form of publishing his plays emerged, and this is the folio. Now, a folio is kind of similar to a quarto, but whereas a quarto had 4 pages per sheet of paper, a folio only had 2. So it was only folded in half once, and they made a bunch of those and sewed them together. And the fun thing was, this was not just individual Shakespeare plays. The folio was the first recorded combination of all of Shakespeare's plays. Well, the ones that they had back then. And the way that this came to be was after Shakespeare died, all of his friends and his pals that worked with him on his shows got together and they wrote out all of his plays, everything they could remember. They grabbed those individual sheets and pieced them together, and they put together a complete works of Shakespeare. It's a lot different from how we have completed works of Shakespeare today in the hardcovers, big, thick-bound books, but it was revolutionary for its time. Now, there is something that is more modern that is really similar to these folios and quartos, and that is called a zine. Now, a zine is really similar to a quarto. You take a piece of paper, you fold it over and over, and you have all these pages in a little book. And what people do with the zine is they use this medium as a way to show their creativity or to write out ideas that they have about a topic and share them with people. And I thought it would be so much fun for us to do this together. We are going to make a zine, a modern interpretation of the classic quarto. Let's get started. Now, in order to do this activity together, we're going to need some fun supplies. First and foremost, you're going to need a sheet of paper. I chose a fun green zine construction paper. You can also just use notebook paper or any regular like copy paper from the printer. You can even go the extra mile and use a recycled piece of newspaper, whatever you have lying around. That's going to be the base of your zine. And then, of course, you're going to need some really fun stuff to decorate your zine with. So what I have here with me is my lovely sheet of paper. I have some fun ribbon, a bunch of fun different washi tape, some colored pencils, fun pens, a handy dandy glue stick, a pair of scissors, some clippings from magazines and playbills that I had lying around, and a super fun classic Summit Player sticker. Now you can use whatever you have lying around. If you have some stamps and ink, that would be fun. If you've got some magazines lying around and your parents are okay with you cutting some stuff out to make kind of a collage, that's totally cool too. But just make sure that if you are using a pair of scissors or if you're cutting up anything in general, that you have parents' permission and supervision. Let's get started learning how to make our zine. So what we're going to do to start is we're going to take our sheet of paper and we are going to use the hot dog hamburger method, which basically means we're going to start by folding our paper in half hot dog style. Love it. Give it a nice crease. Then we are going to fold our hot dog in half hamburger style. And you guessed it, we're gonna fold it one more time hamburger style, thus creating the hot dog hamburger. Then what we're gonna do is we are going to unfold it all so that it's a flat sheet of paper again, and you can see now that you have 8 individual rectangles, and those are going to become our pages. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our sheet of paper and we are going to fold it hamburger style once more. And then looking at it, you should see that there's a little X in the middle where these four rectangles meet. Do you see that? So what you're going to do is you're going to cut from the fold, the crease of the page, to the center. I'm going to draw a line right here so that we have that as a guide. So we're going to cut from the folded edge to the center of our X. Make sure if you are doing this that you have parent supervision to make sure that you are being very careful with your scissors. And once we have that little cut, we can unfold our paper again. So once we're unfolded once more, we will go back into our hot dog fold. Then we'll hold it up, kind of like this. So we have our hot dog standing up on its own. We see the slit in the top. Now what we're going to do is we're going to pinch the ends together and push. And then we have this cool, funky little X. And then what we're going to do is we're just going to collapse the pages together. Just like that. So if you want to see that again, we're going from this to this. Give it a nice, good, firm press down so that we have now our book. Page 1, page 2, page 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Congratulations on creating the base of your zine. And now it is time to decorate. But whatever will we decorate our zine about? Well, I thought it would be super fun to use our zine to talk about everything that we have learned so far on Wednesdays with Will. We've covered a lot of ground, so I thought it would be fun to use the zine medium to go over everything that we've learned so far. Now, you can do this through words. You can write down different things, make lists, or you could do it through pictures. You could go a little abstract and talk about things that you've learned through collage. And you can even combine all of those things together to create a really fun, dynamic, creative zine. So we'll be right back. I'm going to create mine, and then I'll come back and I'll show you what I came up with. I now present to you Caro's Much Ado About Shakespeare zine. So this is mine. I used some fun cutouts to make a little collage. We have William Shakespeare, there he is, and he was three things: a playwright, actor, and a poet. And I drew a bumblebee because he was a busy, busy bee. What else about him? Well, he wrote tragedy, comedy, and history plays, and he wrote in a heartbeat called Iambic Pentameter. Remember learning about all of that? And he worked in London, England at the Globe Theatre. Pip, pip, cheerio. And he was one cool dude. That is my zine about Mr. William Shakespeare. I can't wait to see what you come up with on your zine. If you would like to see a close-up of mine to get a better idea of what you're doing, or if you want to send us your zine when you're finished, you can do both of those things on our website at www.summitplayerstheater.com. I will see you again next week. Until then, be safe and stay kind. Ta-ta!